Now, it's been reported today that Australia's population is growing slower than predicted. The country was meant to hit 30 million people in the 2030-31 financial year, but that has now blown out by 2 years to 2032-33. Even so, that is a significant spike in just 10 years. The population now is about 26 million people. Another 4 million in 10 years is, of course, 400,000 people a year. Now, that's 400,000 people who need somewhere to live, to go to school and to work. It's 400,000 people who need cars and food and pubs and activities, and on the list goes. But at the same time as the population will be growing, it will on average be getting older. We talked about this earlier in the week. Currently, about 17% of the Australian population is aged over 65. By 2061, it's predicted that over 65s will make up 31% of the population. Now, this presents a bit of a problem because as the population grows, you have fewer people as a proportion of the population in the workforce. And regardless of age, you draw upon the services and the needs that all humans have, and arguably older people require more intensive and involved services such as aged care. Now, we're already struggling as it is to keep up with demand in Australia. You ask any employer, particularly those in hospitality and retail or the like, and it is difficult to get workers. Now, part of that is because COVID changed the way people worked and thus changed their expectations of what employment should be. And coupled with a very competitive employment market, it's put prospective workers in the box seat to make demands and mould their jobs into what they want them to be. But the reason we have a competitive employment market is because demand is outstripping supply. And that, of course, happens because the population has grown and wealth has grown and we want to buy and do things. But if we can't be self-sufficient in terms of the services we are demanding, then we're in a spot of bother. Now, the solution that is often proffered for this problem is to import more foreign workers. Just ship them in and get them to do the work that needs to be done. And yes, foreign labour has long been a mainstay of many industries such as agriculture, which of course draws on backpackers and short-term visitors to pick fruit and vegetables. But all of these foreign workers need exactly the same services and have all the same demands that the rest of us do. If they have kids, they need to send them to school. They need a roof over their heads, they need doctors, they need groceries. So the supposed solution to the demand then ends up adding to the demand, particularly if they end up staying here for some time, perhaps even discovering how great Australia is and wanting to become a permanent resident. The more people we have, the more we have to deliver. And this seems to be the discussion that is so often missed when we talk about population growth. I understand that businesses like the idea of it because it means more customers for them and thus more profits. But how do we actually cater for all of these people? How will we cater for another 4 million people in the next 10 years? Now, to put this into context, Brisbane is home to about 2.5 million people. So in the next decade, we need to create in this country 1.6 more Brisbanes. Now, we are thankfully a country blessed with abundant space. We're not going to run out of room to put people in. But we do need to have a serious discussion as a country as to who we want to be. The dream of Australian home ownership was largely built on the quarter-acre block with a backyard and room for the kids to run around. Urban infill has slowly changed that as larger homes have been knocked over and land has been subdivided. Particularly in cities like Melbourne and Sydney, apartments have taken over, even outside of the city. But what we need to grapple with as a country is whether we want to be a nation that grows up or grows out. Are we willing to dispense with backyards and personal space and live in apartments or poker units? Are we willing to give up 4-bedroom houses with rumpus rooms and all this sort of thing so we can accommodate everyone? It's really a question of whether or not we want to remain a country of big cities. Queensland is the most decentralised state, and New South Wales and Victoria have some level of decentralisation with places like Wollongong and Newcastle and Geelong. But our capital cities are, by and large, the only place that anyone lives. Of the 1.7 million people who live in South Australia, 1.3 million are in Adelaide. The concentration of West Australians in Perth is even greater, despite Western Australia being such a big place. Now, you can continue the urban sprawl around our cities, but there has to come a point where it becomes basically pointless. Australian cities are among the least densely populated in the world. We have some of the largest urban sprawl in the world. And if you keep going that way, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, you'll end up with people living so far from the CBD that they may as well have packed up and gone regional. And that is the other option. If we still want space and big houses and large blocks, we have plenty of regional towns that could expand. Now, regional Australia is often forgotten, but we must never forget that it is the engine room of this nation. If we established an economy, an employment market that allowed people to do so, there's no reason that we couldn't become a nation of regional towns. More people in Queensland live outside of Brisbane than in Brisbane. They've proven that we can do it. But because regional Australia has been largely ignored for so long, the infrastructure and services aren't there to deal with an influx of people. A move to the regions could present a great nation-building exercise. All those services, of course, would have to be built. Now, it would create jobs in the short term with the build, and then it would create jobs in the long term because retail and business would naturally expand with the advent of more people. But again, would the demand end up outstripping the supply as we have right now? I can't give you the answer tonight, but this is a discussion that we need to have as an entire nation, and it requires our political leaders to have the guts to start it. It's a discussion about who we are and what we want to be. It involves migration levels and many other things that some would rather not talk about, but it is important. It's not an issue that provides a quick political sugar hit. It's not something that will get a federal government re-elected in 3 years' time. And that's what's so sad about the political leadership we see today. There is little vision. Long-term goals and discussions, no matter how important, are often cast aside in favour of problems that can be solved in the short term and thus make politicians look good. This is a problem, though, and a big one at that. And the longer we ignore it, the more we run the risk of ending up with a country that hasn't been built to best suit us, but one that has had pieces stuck to it at the last minute just so we can cope with the sheer number of people.